The First Decade as a Software Engineer with Joe Cuevas.
The Azure and DevOps podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using the latest in .NET, Azure, AI, and DevOps. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. The show is sponsored by ClearMeasure, a full-service software architecture and engineering firm. Find them at www.clearmeasure.com. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. My guest today on the show is Joe Cuevas. He is a senior software engineer based in San Antonio, Texas, with a strong focus on front-end development and user experience. He currently works at Southwest Research Institute, and he contributes to innovative engineering solutions that span many industries. And with a background that blends technical precision and creative problem solving, Joe likes to bring a thoughtful perspective to the evolving world of software development. He has a passion for clean design and scalable code and collaborative innovation, and that really makes him a standout voice in today's tech landscape. And he's just knocking on the door of 10 years as a software industry. And I know so many people in the industry are, getting through their first 5 years as a programmer, first 10 years as a programmer, and the learning journey that goes along with it. So I'm excited to have him on the show. Welcome to the podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Jeffrey. Thank you for having me on the show. Longtime listener. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, great. And you also participate in the ClearMeasure Architect forums. And that's where we kind of got to know each other a little bit more. We'll include a link to that in the show notes. But I wanted to have you kind of share your experience, because we have so many new programmers coming into the field every day, and you're knocking on 10 years of experience. And I remember my first few years as a programmer. I'm looking around, and the people that have been in the industry a decade, I'm like, man, they've been doing this a long time, and I was learning so much from them. But let's go back a little bit so listeners can kind of get to know you. Do you remember why you kind of even got attracted to computer programming, even to decide, I'd like to do this job?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've always liked solving puzzles or problems of sorts. I remember that I got into using computers in my younger teenage years, and then I quickly moved on to fixing those computers. And then I did IT support specialist work for a good while before I proceeded to seek a master's degree. And it was until I took this one specific course, and I'll never forget it, VB.NET. And took that course, got guidance from the book, got guidance from the professor in that course, and I was hooked on programming. I knew my next move was going to be software development. And soon thereafter, I'd say less than a year later, I was in a software development job. And you're right, I'm coming up on 10 years soon.
Nice. So there's a pattern I've seen, programmers who also have built their own computers, have installed their own networks, have done kind of some of the hardware side. It really helps.
That's true.
Has that been your experience?
Definitely. NAS server, home networking, Plex server, and then I have a lot of colleagues and peers that have similar backgrounds. They're buying Ubiquity brand networking devices, so they're always tinkering with those devices. I've never taken it to setting up my own Pi-hole servers or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds very interesting, but yeah, I agree. Lots of people have this similar background.
Yeah, well, I definitely have a Pi-hole filtering the internet at my house, but I've got 3 kids at home. And it's like, we all know all the nasty stuff on the internet that does not has no place inside our house. But
sure.
But yeah, when you have kids at home, I found myself starting to think about that more so than if it was just me. It's like, okay, well, I know what I'm doing. But so you decided to be a coder. And a lot of people are deciding to be, coders these days, whether you call it software engineer, software developer, programmer. It's like, whatever. We got so many terms now. We're programmers. there's so many different types of programming. How did you, or what kind of drew you to business programming and .NET?
Well, it naturally fell into the position that was available for me to fill in.
Mm-hmm.
So I had applied to a particular position. And where I'm from, I'm not from San Antonio originally. I'm from Laredo, Texas. I think the job market there for software development is a lot more limited.
Mm-hmm.
So they were looking specifically for a .NET developer.
Okay.
So that's what guided me towards a specific framework there, and that would have been web applications, specifically focusing on the enterprise side of things.
Yeah. That's a good point. There are certain parts of the country where there's like concentrations of certain programming languages and platforms, and you can't ignore that. That kind of is reality. Whereas I started programming in 1997, my first paid job, and I think from then on, it almost doesn't even matter what major language or platform. You pick one and there's plenty of work out there. You might have to move somewhere, but there's plenty of work out there.
That's true. I think if you focus on object-oriented programming, I think you're in a good space.
Now, on your LinkedIn profile, you've kind of listed that the copious amount of books that have contributed to your own learning and growth. And so I want to kind of help the listeners out. What books should people be reading, and why? And what did you get from those books?
What books? Well, I don't want to give out a blanket statement of what they should be learning, but I'll share my experience of what I picked.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I knew I needed to study .NET, specifically within the last 9 years of experience. I knew that there was .NET Core that came out, or ASP.NET Core for that web application framework. So I started looking into those books. I started finding, okay, what are the most reviewed books that are getting good feedback, and is, people are writing that it's helping them grow in their professional career. I fell upon some ASP.NET Core books that were from Manning specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So then I picked up, I believe it was ASP.NET Core in Action. I think Andrew Locke wrote that. Yeah. I think it might have been the first edition. That was one of the first ones. But apart from that, I also fell upon other topics. After I started reading that, I knew that I had to specialize in other things. I had to learn about dependency injection. I had to learn about the importance of testing, unit testing. So then from there, it just grew into similar topics, but then topics that are related to that. So then I fell upon other topics like concurrency, even algorithms, because I don't come from a formal background of computer science. I have a Master of Science in Information Sciences or Information Systems. So I knew I had to make up for that lack of strength in the computer science realm. But really, just to bring it back together, reading these books has really helped me grow as a software developer. And if somebody were to start and look for a book to start reading, I'd say pick one that's closest to your objective. Start with that. Don't try to replicate everything in a book. Just follow along if there's any practical examples. Mm-hmm. And if you like it, then continue building on that.
Yeah. So it's funny. My degree is in information systems as well. But you mentioned like lack of strength or background. I don't see it that way, because I don't think a university degree, well, there may be some exceptions, actually prepares you to do this job. And I do a lot of hiring, and I haven't seen, the graduates who they're coming out and they know exactly what to do, and they've taken the right courses that they should. Everybody takes a mix of courses, but everybody's also doing self-study. And I mean, maybe there's some universities out there that are doing a really great job. I'm sure there are somewhere, but it seems like you didn't stop learning and stop studying just because you got the diploma. You kept
That's
on.
Right.
You kept on. I think that's what has to happen.
That's true. I think the main difference, though, if there were one, I think I've heard of some computer science tracks having lead code specific style of learning,
Hmm.
or you'll learn how to solve those lead code problems out there. So maybe that's what's different nowadays. But I agree. I think the background is mainly the same. What was different in mine was that there was a bit of a focus on the business side of things as well.
Hmm.
So I really appreciated that because that's also something that interests me highly.
Yeah, nice. Now, you mentioned test automation.
Mhm.
Um, is there a book that stands out on your journey with test automation?
Yes, it was pretty influential in my career growth, and I'm trying to find the listing that I have. I have a reference of books here. It's Unit Testing: Principles, Practices, and Patterns by Vladimir Korokov. That really opened my eyes and showed me the importance of unit testing, and not just that, the importance of writing good code and well encapsulated code. So it really touches on all the foundational bits of software development and how it all ties together. So yeah, that particular book is still one of my favorite books that I've read so far.
Nice. And regardless of how you come to it, man, just testing in general. I do remember a time in my career before automated testing was easy, and not that it's easy, but before it was common, when it was really rare in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I mean, something would happen, a change would be made, and then guess what? We found something that used to work. Now it doesn't work anymore. And turns out we broke it several weeks ago. We just hadn't come through that path or that feature. And then guess what? We have to stop working on the feature. We have to go back and fix it and spend time re-debugging because many changes had happened since we actually broke it. And I mean, you couldn't pay me to build software without test automation today. I
Yeah,
don't know if you feel just as strongly as me, but what's been your experience?
I'd say that's very true. So you're talking about regressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've I've seen that. I've interacted with many code bases that don't have any formal testing. So then you'll fall back in those scenarios. You usually fall back to a manual QA process. The thing is, once you've built software past a certain point of complexity, you can't QA everything manually.
Yeah.
So that's where unit testing, integration testing, even UI testing all comes into play. But yeah, I favor that, and that's mainly a reason why I find, that's the point where I find, okay, I want to introduce different type of architecture, even if it's not a full blown architecture implementation. I'll take bits and patterns of a certain architecture just to enable a unit testing test case or story there. So that's how I find my way working with those types of projects.
Yeah. And what's been your journey through just unit testing on the spectrum to test first or test driven development?
I do not work with not because I don't want to, just because I don't usually use test driven development. I usually do my tests after I write the code.
Mm-hmm.
But you can put yourself in a very dangerous spot if you don't write your tests immediately after you write your code. Because what are the chances you'll go back and actually write it? That's when you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But test-driven development, I think that fits when you have a software project where you're building on components that already exist. And if you're doing more of those components, then that's where you might benefit from test-driven development.
Yeah. I tend to be pretty bullish on test-driven development, but I will admit that I don't do it all the time. There's certain scenarios where I say, oh, you know what? I'm going to write the test first. But then there's a whole lot of scenarios where I just kind of mishmash and kind of do it slightly after and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have found is if the tests don't come in the same pull request as the actual code being worked on, then, like you said, chances are the tests for that are probably never going to come.
I think that's really good guidance. Put it in the same pull request. If it's not there, maybe a code reviewer could fail it until somebody puts it in there.
Yeah. And
And
go ahead.
yeah, well, and I think another good place to put it is when you get a bug report, for sure. That's a really great use case for a TDD.
Yeah, that's right. It's, okay, we did a manual test, and that manual test failed, and we call it a bug. We said, hey, expected behavior is not like we wanted it to be. And so that's an easy time to make an automated test that fails because we found out the area of the code that's not behaving as we want it to. That's a good point.
Sure.
That's a good point. So you got your stack of books. What's the next one that has kind of been influential for you?
I don't know if I can actually reveal this, but I'm actively reviewing a new book for Manning. It's the Microsoft Semantic Kernel in Action book.
Nice.
And that's really interesting. I'll have to give it another go. I gave it my initial read through. And yeah, it's a really interesting space. I'm very excited for what large language models can do for our code bases nowadays.
And is that the by Daniel Costea?
Daniel Costea, that's correct.
Awesome. And so that's in early access preview, I think, right now with Manning.
That's right.
So people can get it. It's just not fully published.
Exactly. And actually, let me bring it back to when you first brought on the topic of books. I jumped into helping review these manuscript reviews or books from Manning particularly, because I saw an email from them one time. It said, do you want to be a manuscript reviewer? And I thought it was like, oh, you must have some qualifications. You need to do this, do that. It was very early on in my career, maybe a couple of years into my professional development career. I applied and they accepted me. And now I've been reviewing books since 2021.
Nice.
And I've been helping contribute to the .NET ecosystem. So yeah, it's really, it's been very enriching. And later at a point came the subscriptions where readers can get access to these books. I'm not saying it's not enticing for me to review these books because I still get this gratification from helping build something. Now, I may not be the author, but I am giving the author some feedback that they can use to build on as a professional developer. So
yeah,
when it makes a cut, that's when I feel most fulfilled there.
And your name is in those books.
That's right.
In the front matter.
Exactly.
Right. That's right. That's cool. Yeah, I there's a handful of books that I've been technical reviewer as well. And anybody listening, I encourage that as well. That's a great thing to do. So you are reviewing right now a early access artificial intelligence book. So I mean, it goes so many different ways. What seems to be figured out in that space? There's lots of things that we're trying to figure out, and could AI do this or could it do that? But in order to write a book about something, it has to be the things that are ready for prime time right now. So what are the big things that everybody needs to know? Hey, these are ready for prime time. You could do it right now.
That's right. Well, I really think prompt engineering has made good progress. And what I mean by that, I don't think we've mastered prompt engineering overall, but I think every solution out there has some sort of prompt engineering built into it. If you have, for example, some of those new agents that just came out for GitHub or even OpenAI's coding agents, they all have an agent.md file or agents.md file, and it's sub instructions for those processes. So I think that's pretty well established right now. But anything else in the space, I really don't have super deep experience. But I have been playing around with some things out there, and as to what's ready and fully baked, I don't think we have that many of those products just yet. But then again, that's just my opinion. I may be lacking insight into it further, but I have been having a lot of fun with some of the offerings out there.
Okay, so have you been testing out Copilot?
Not Copilot specifically. I just this past weekend I got to test out OpenAI's Codex.
Okay.
And that was really interesting. I haven't played around with the Azure, the GitHub offering just yet. But this one is available through an experimental preview through ChatGPT Plus subscription right now. So I didn't want to go out there buy tokens through an API.
Yeah.
I just said, hey, use my $20 subscription. I'll use that. I was pleasantly surprised that I could just link up my GitHub repo. I have a production site out there. It's just a domain I have with my name on it, and it links to my socials. That's all it is. I have plans to make a blog out of it one of these days, and that should be coming really soon. But yeah, hooked up Codex to that repo.
Okay.
And one of the suggested tasks was explain my code base. Explain it. And it gave me a review. I'm like, okay, this is great. Then one of the things that blew my mind here was, okay, now I can give it a task and it'll create the PR for me and actually change my Azure static website. I'm like, okay, let me see that in action. I told it, add some CSS animation to the landing page because it's just one simple index.html page or index page there. I did it. It did it in a few minutes. Started the pull request. I go to my GitHub pull request. I look at the preview of the site and it built a CSS animation onto my site without me ever touching it. That would have taken me at least 2, 3, 4 hours because I don't have big skills on CSS.
Yeah.
But just to see that a virtual team member can now work on my code base just blew me completely away. And I couldn't stop thinking about it for the rest of the day. I was so excited.
That is cool. So Codex is not in VS Code or Visual Studio. It's just a separate process out there that's just doing some commits to a branch in your GitHub repo.
Exactly. And I use it on the web interface. Even though I have the native GPT apps, it just takes you to a web page right now. And I think they're still working on it because it's still experimental.
Yeah.
And I found out something really cool. I found on Reddit, I was reading through OpenAI's Ask Me Anything post. It was from the OpenAI team. And they were talking about Codex. And they said that their developers weren't using enough AI to build their platform. So they created Codex to help contribute back to building ChatGPT.
Nice. Well, that totally makes sense.
Really
I mean,
awesome.
if something is possible, if something works, why not use it? I mean, the world of a programmer is to keep on expanding what a computer can automate. I mean, nobody really wants to use a computer, but they love the things that a computer can do for us.
Yeah.
It's just part of it.
Exactly.
So, well, that's cool. There's so many out there. Cursor, Codex, Copilot, JetBrains AI assistant, and all of them are in a race to see who can. What company can produce a tool that can do the most work. But I do find something. All of them are focusing on the construction, the code writing or code changing part of the software development lifecycle, where there's so much work in figuring out what the right thing to do actually is. Because once we decide what we want to do, okay, we need to make the code do it so that the computer can have the right behavior. What's your thought on, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years of your career, and what you see AI doing to change what you might be doing day to day?
Definitely, I think it will be helping me structure architecture for team development. I enjoy being an individual contributor for software, but at the same time, I really like when I can make an impact across the entire team of developers. And I think that's exactly where that space is going to shine. It'll help create structure only because I know that it's really good at creating structure. Until I get my mind blown again, like I had with that Codex moment earlier that I described, maybe my point of view might change, and I'll see, okay, large language models have strengths in these areas as well. But yeah, I see the constraints right now, and I know it's typically just somebody has to check what it's outputting. And I feel I'm in a space where I can verify that. And if I don't understand it, I have enough experience to get out there and see, okay, I think this is correct. Let's adopt that. But yeah, that's what I see. It's going to help structure your software architecture.
Nice. And so for all of the young programmers out there listening, I just want to point out what I did not hear you say is, well, I guess I'm going to have to go and find another job. No,
No.
like you're jazzed up about it because it's going to turbocharge your capabilities.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, Jeffrey. Don't stop studying. Thing is, these large language models can help you study much more effectively and actually reach the title. Say you're a junior dev, you can reach that title of senior dev much more faster because you might be able to get help along the way faster than you can at your own workplace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's how I've been using it.
There's a lot of older code out there, and you've probably inherited some code that was written by people, many years ago, and you had to do something with it or had to upgrade it. I was just pulling an older application that used in Hibernate XML mappings for all the data access layer. And I was thinking, you know what, I really want this to be in Entity Framework, the latest version of Entity Framework. And so I used Copilot in Visual Studio, and I was able to establish the pattern and then get the tooling to actually morph the structure of the in-hibernate mappings into equivalent Entity Framework core mappings, along with, and it did have integration tests for all the data access, so I knew that it worked properly. And man, I mean, that would have, I could have done it, but it would have taken me several days to get through all of those. And I think it was done in less than an hour. And,
wow.
And I've done a lot of in-hibernate in my past, but it's been a while. And there's all kinds of different mappings, one-to-one composite mappings, ordered collections, all kinds of different mappings. I don't remember. They're not on the tip of my brain. And so, I forget stuff, or like you said, CSS. I never learned CSS animations, but it just goes through. And so it's, we're going to find more and more use cases where the patterns are out there and some documentation or something that the model's been trained on, or if it hasn't, we can use vector database and augment that, or put the pattern in our own code base. So that's cool.
Yeah, I agree. So that's where these large language models shine. If something's been out there for a very long time, these large language models have a lot of reference material to build on and produce those type of solutions for you. I think the older the technology is that you're throwing to the large language model, you can use the cheaper large language model offerings as well. Those will be well equipped to handle just that without you having to jump into the reasoning models, where then you might have to feed it some new documentation because it's something brand new and it's a framework that's only been around for 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I think if there's a lot of examples out there, it's working in your favor.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, we kind of dove into the Microsoft Semantic Kernel in Action book. What's another notable book that's been transformative in your journey?
I would say Mark Siemens' book, Dependency Injection, Principles, Practices, and Patterns. That one is what took me from a junior level developer to a senior level developer, in my opinion, because once I was able to understand dependency injection, I was able to start, writing code that actually focuses on unit tests. Even if at the very beginning I was writing horrible unit tests, it was something that I kept on working on and improving over the years. But definitely, dependency injection has been a big eye-opener, especially because it's baked into the .NET, ASP.NET Core framework and not natively. Well, they did retrofit it through Owen and .NET Framework, I believe. So you can get it in there.
For web
but
applications.
But for web applications, you're right. But it requires a lot more plumbing to get it working.
Right.
But I've done it for the sake of unit tests.
The big aha for me in dependency injection, because I remember learning it I think 2005. And it was that in order to use a piece of code, I don't have to have an actual hard reference to the assembly of that code. I can rely on an abstraction, and at runtime, I can have that assembly in the call stack and it end up being called, but the code that's causing it to be called doesn't actually have a dependency on it specifically. That little bit of indirection.
Exactly. I was about to say indirection. Yeah, it's been very useful, even for setting up mocks. Say it's a very complicated call and it actually reaches out to the web. You can even fake your HTTP responses if you need to.
Yep.
So that's all enabled through dependency injection.
Yeah. Yep. And there's like two patterns that I remember learning. One was just the indirection, which was, okay, create an abstraction, and then you have the implementation, and you don't have a direct reference. But the other was, and you mentioned object-oriented programming, the other was the polymorphism, where I have an abstraction, but I have multiple implementations of it, and then at runtime, it ends up routing to the appropriate one.
That's right.
So, I think one of the mistakes I've seen people who are just getting into dependency injection is they end up having an explosion of interfaces everywhere because they're just leaning on the indirection aspect and not leveraging the polymorphism. And so that's I did it too when I was learning. Like interface for everything,
exactly.
instead of leaning on some polymorphism.
I'm guilty of that myself. So, I think we all go through it.
Yeah, natural progression of learning. And then you start to realize, wait a minute, I'm using a C# interface, but I don't actually need the object-oriented concept of an interface right here. Let me change that.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, as we kind of getting close to our time here, I know you have a whole stack of books. Is there one final book that you think you'd like to highlight?
Well, on the topic of object-oriented programming, I hadn't read a book that tied all the concepts of OOP and .NET together. So I saw that world kind of merged into one book, and it's a big book, but I love it. It's the Pro C# 9 or 10 with .NET 6 from Philip Japix and Andrew Trolson. Japixi and Andrew Trolson. That was a great book to read just to get caught up on the object-oriented programming principles. It's got an entire section dedicated just to that, or maybe a few chapters, but it's what's necessary for you to understand the concepts presented to you in .NET. So that's always a great book to go back to. I keep it as a reference. And I started in a way earlier book. I think I started in the editions. I was still focused on .NET.
Yeah.
But I've kept up and I've purchased the newer books, whether print or PDF, but I still keep up with them.
Nice. Yeah. Pro C# 10.
Yeah. It's a great book.
And I think that one's looking at it. Yeah, that's from 2022. So only a couple of years old. So very, very fresh. And yeah, C#, there's been some new features, but it's been pretty darn stable in the last, 5 or so versions.
Yeah, I agree. And it's very much relevant right now. So I wouldn't let that deter anyone from grabbing this book and reading it, because it's still applicable. And any changes, you can track those changes through Microsoft's release notes for C#.
Nice. Yeah, it is one thing to say, oh, I need to learn the language features, but really, we all need to know the object-oriented concepts, because the language just brings those to life.
That's true. I agree.
Well, Joe, as we kind of close up, thinking about the listeners who are maybe in their first couple of years, or maybe they're knocking on their 5-year door. Any parting thoughts that you would have benefited to hearing when you were in, say, your first 5 years as a programmer?
I like to say that I got lucky and I fell upon the proper structure here. So I'm gonna share what I think helped me the most. go to the person who's the smartest in your group, or the people that are the smartest in your group, and go learn from them. Go ask them, hey, can you explain this part of the code base for me? That's what I did when I first joined in my software development jobs. I went to the smartest person that I knew there, or the most influential, because everyone can be smart in your group. And just by doing that, you're exposing yourself into an area that you don't understand, but yet somebody may help you get up to speed. And the learnings you'll gain from that are what's going to help you get further in your career there. So not only will you learn, you'll show interest to these leaders in your group, and they might start, giving you tasks that relate to that. So I would say, go ahead and approach those people. Now, if I were to tell myself, go back 5 years, it wouldn't be in the first 5 years, but I think early in my career before I started programming, I wish I would have told myself, don't give up trying to code, because there were many times before I actually became a software developer that I tried to pick up coding and I just couldn't crack it for one reason or another. Maybe I found the resources too complicated to understand. But yeah, if you're really trying to get to that next step, just don't stop. Just try again. I know it sounds cheesy, but it's good advice, and I think you'll get pretty far if you just continue and find somebody to guide you through that.
Just keep going. Never give up.
Yes, that's true.
Awesome. Well, Joe, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you visiting with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jeffrey. I look forward to hearing this.
Awesome. Well, until next time, dear listener, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure and DevOps podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Visit our sponsor, ClearMeasure, at www.clearmeasure.com. And on behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.